The sun burned the desert until even the shadows begged for mercy. She ran, barefoot, breath tearing through her chest like fire. Dust clung to her face and blood streaked her calves where the cactus tore her skin. Behind her, the sound of hooves kept echoing, louder, closer. A gunshot cracked the silence and a dry scream escaped her throat. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Her name was Isabel Alvarez, and for the past 2 days she had been running from men who wore badges but carried no souls. The world tilted as she stumbled over a dead branch. Her knees hit the dirt and her palms shredded on gravel. Every breath tasted like metal. Every step felt borrowed from death. The horizon swam in heat waves until she saw it. A ranch, wood fences, a table half broken beside an old barn. No people, no soldiers, just silence and the buzzing of flies. She dragged herself forward, one shaken hand after another, crawling through the dust. Her vision blurred, her lips cracked. She could hear her stomach crying louder than her voice. When she finally reached the shade of that broken table, her body gave up. She tried to lift it again, but the strength betrayed her. Her fingers found a splintered edge of wood and held on like it was the last solid thing in her life. For a moment, she thought maybe dying here would be quieter than running. That was when she heard the boots. Slow steps, measured, not chasing, not shouting. Just coming closer. Her eyes lifted and saw a man standing a few feet away. Broad shoulders, sunburned skin. A face carved by years and silence. In his hand, an axe, still wet from work. He didn't look like a soldier, but he looked dangerous in another way. The kind of man who had buried more than one secret out here. He took one step forward. She tried to crawl back, but her body refused to move. Her pulse thundered in her ears. When he knelt and reached a hand toward her shoulder, the fear broke loose from her chest. Her voice came out cracked, half whisper, half plea. Be gentle. It's too fast. The words hung in the heat, trembling in the air between them. The man froze, his hand still suspended above her. His eyes searched her face as if trying to understand what kind of wound could make a person fear kindness. The wind carried the smell of sweat, dust, and something faintly human. Pity, maybe regret. He lowered his hand and spoke slowly, the words heavy with an accent roughened by solitude. You hurt. It wasn't a question. She flinched anyway, as if each word was a touch. He stood again, walked to the barn, came back with a canteen, and set it on the ground beside her. Then he turned away. No questions, no threats, only distance. Isabel stared at the water until her reflection blurred. Could she trust a stranger who didn't ask where she came from, who didn't demand anything in return? The desert had never given her anything without taking twice as much back. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the canteen. The metal was warm from the sun, but it felt like mercy. From somewhere behind the barn, she heard the faint cry of a horse and the creak of a wooden gate. The man was still there, watching her maybe, or guarding her. She didn't know which frightened her more. Her voice cracked again, softer now, swallowed by wind. Who are you? And why didn't you walk away when you saw me? When Isabel opened her eyes again, the sun had turned soft. The barn smelled of hay and old wood. For the first time in days, no one was chasing her, but peace felt like another kind of trap. She sat up fast, her body screaming from every muscle. The canteen still lay by her side, half empty. He had not taken it back. She looked around and saw him near the fence, fixing a rope. Every move he made was slow, steady, like a man who had stopped rushing a long time ago. He noticed her watching and gave a small nod, nothing more. No smile, no threat. Just that quiet kind of respect that confused her more than fear ever did. Her stomach growled so loud it made the horse snort. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She chose neither. He walked back to the barn and handed her a piece of bread and a tin cup. Eat, he said, voice rough like gravel. She hesitated, her fingers trembling before taking it. It tasted dry but real, like something meant for living people. After a few bites, she whispered without looking up, You could have turned me in. He wiped his hands on his shirt and said, I could have. But I didn't. She frowned. Why? He looked at her a long time before answering. Because you didn't ask for help. You just needed a place to stop running. The words sat heavy between them. No one spoke for a while. Outside, the wind pushed dust against the walls like rain made of sand. She finally stood up, still shaky. Her eyes darted to the open door, to the wide desert waiting beyond. Freedom or fear? Same thing, really. She took 2 steps toward the door, then froze. Her gaze landed on a rifle hanging on the wall. Old, but clean. Load, maybe. Her pulse quickened. Was this kindness real, or was it another kind of trap dressed up in good manners? He noticed her stare. You can take it if you want, he said quietly. Shoot me if it makes you sleep better. She blinked, unsure if he was serious. Nobody ever gave her that kind of choice before. Her throat tightened and she turned away. I don't want to shoot anyone, she murmured. He shrugged. Then don't. That night, Isabel lay awake on the hay. Through the cracks in the wall, she could see the moon, silver and distant, like something watching over both of them. Every time the wind rattled the door, she jumped, waiting for footsteps, for voices, for the past to find her again. But all she heard was the slow, steady rhythm of a man breathing on the porch outside. He stayed there all night, just sitting, just listening to the desert breathe. By morning, the question burned in her chest stronger than hunger. Who was this man who could be so calm with a stranger sleeping in his barn? And what was he really hiding behind those quiet eyes? Morning came slow and quiet. The desert stretched wide and gold, the kind of morning that looked peaceful from far away but burned like truth when you stood in it. Henry poured coffee into a tin cup and set it beside the barn door. Isabel was already awake, sitting near the wall, eyes red from another sleepless night. He said only one word. Coffee. She looked at the steam curling up and whispered, Thank you. Her voice still carried that sound of someone who had learned to whisper even when no one was listening. When she stepped outside, the sunlight hit her face, and for a second she forgot she was supposed to be afraid. A small smile almost appeared, but then she saw them. 3 men on horseback standing near the fence, watching. Not soldiers this time, just townsfolk, but the kind that love trouble more than peace. One of them spat in the dust and said loud enough for everyone to hear, Guess the old rancher likes his company young and foreign. Henry's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. He just stared until they turned their horses and rode away, but the look they left behind hung heavier than dust. Inside, Isabel clenched her hands. They hate me. Henry took a slow sip of coffee. They hate what they don't understand. She let out a tired laugh. Then they must hate a lot of things. He almost smiled at that. By noon, Sheriff Dwayne showed up. Boots clean, hat too white for honest work. He leaned on the doorframe and said, Heard you got a guest. Henry. A pretty one, too. Henry didn't answer. The sheriff's eyes slid toward Isabel. You know the law says she can't be here. Henry looked straight at him. I know the law also says a man's home is his. The tension thickened like summer heat. Finally, the sheriff smirked. You always did like testing limit. Don't let this one ruin you. Then he tipped his hat and walked out. The silence that followed felt louder than gunfire. That evening, Isabel sat on the porch steps, watching the horizon swallow the sun. She spoke without turning around. They won't stop, will they? Henry answered softly. No, but neither will you. Her lips curved into the smallest smile. For the first time, she believed it. Somewhere in that quiet moment, something changed between them. Not love yet, but the start of something that might survive the desert. So before we go any further, take a deep breath, pour yourself a cup of tea or maybe a little whiskey if that's more your style. Tell me, what time is it where you are? And where in this wide world are you listening from? And if you're still here with me, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss how this story unfolds. Because what happens next will test both their hearts and the whole town's mercy. Night dropped fast that day, heavy and dry. The air smelled like rain that never came. Henry sat by the fire sharpening a knife. The kind of old habit men keep when they know trouble is coming. Isabel was inside the barn, trying to sew a torn sleeve by lamplight. The flame trembled every time the wind pushed through the cracks. Somewhere out in the dark, a horse whinnied, then another, then boots on gravel. Henry's head lifted. He didn't move, just listened. counting the steps. 3 men, maybe 4. Too light for farmers. Too confident for travelers. The door creaked open and a voice slurred through the dark. "Well now, look what the old man's hiding." It was one of the men from the fence, drunk on whiskey and hate. The others laughed behind him. Henry stood, the knife still in his hand. "I told you to stay off my land." They stepped closer, boots crunching on the dry dirt. "You don't own the girl, Henry. She's worth a lot to the right people." Before Henry could answer, Isabel came out of the barn holding the old rifle. Her hand shook, but her eyes didn't. "She's not for sale," she said quietly. The lead man grinned. "Sweetheart, you don't even belong here." He reached out and grabbed her arm. The next second, the rifle butt slammed into his face. Blood spilled. He stumbled back, cursing, and the others charged. Henry swung first, catching one in the jaw. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he kept going, fists in fury. Isabel screamed, fired one warning shot into the air, the sound slicing through the night like thunder. The horses panicked and bolted. The men backed off, muttering threats as they dragged their wounded friend away. They left only because the gunshot drew attention from the town. Silence fell again, broken only by Henry's rough breathing. He leaned on the fence, blood on his temple, dust in his hair. Isabel dropped the rifle and ran to him. "Why did you fight for me?" she whispered. He looked at her for a long time before answering. "Because I'm tired of watching good people get hurt for no damn reason." The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain and gunpowder. They stood there in the half-light, 2 people who had nothing left to lose but each other. Somewhere in that silence, trust began to grow roots. But the desert keeps its own secrets, and the night was not done with them yet, because while they thought the danger had passed, a darker shadow was still waiting beyond the ridge. Morning rose slow and gold after a long night of silence. The storm had passed. The ground still carried the smell of gunpowder and wet dust. Henry stood by the porch, one arm bandaged, looking out across the land that had seen too much already. Behind him, Isabel stepped outside holding 2 cups of coffee. Her face was calm, softer than it had ever been. She handed him one without a word. They stood there for a while, just watching the sun climb over the ridge. No soldiers, no strangers. No running, just the sound of wind moving through dry grass. Henry spoke first. "You can leave today if you want. The road's clear now." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked toward the horizon, then down at her scarred hands. "I've been running my whole life, from people, from pain, from myself. Maybe it's time I stop." He looked at her and smiled. "Then stay." It wasn't a command. It was an invitation. For peace. For a new start. For something simple and quiet that might finally heal what the world broke. Weeks passed. Isabel helped fix fences, learned to saddle horses, and sometimes laughed without catching herself. The people in town still whispered, but their voices no longer mattered. Because out there in the open land, judgment had no place to hide. One evening, she asked him softly, "Do you ever regret helping me?" Henry took a long breath before answering. "Regret? No. We don't get many chances to do something right in this world. When one shows up, you take it." He turned to her, eyes steady. "You saved me too, Isabel. You just don't know it yet." The last light of the day slid over the fields, painting everything in gold. 2 people who started as strangers now stood side by side, not because fate demanded it, but because kindness built something stronger than fear. And maybe that's the lesson, hidden in this quiet little story. That sometimes it only takes one act of mercy to change a whole life. That love does not always roar. Sometimes it simply stays. So before you go, let me ask you this. When was the last time you slowed down long enough to see someone who needed a little kindness? And what if that one small act could change everything? If this story made you feel something, take a second to like the video and share it with someone who could use a bit of hope today. And if you haven't yet, subscribe so you can join us for the next story from the wild heart of the West. Now, pour yourself another cup of tea, breathe for a moment, and tell me, what time is it where you are, and where in this world are you listening from?